Right, well, we'll reconvene. Thank you, everybody, and we've got a quorum because Mayor Sandra's online, so thank you. And welcome, Caitlin, from across the Tasman.
Thank you. Thanks so much for waiting and holding out the meeting so that I could have my submission.
It's fine. You're welcome. So the floor is yours, Caitlin.
Amazing. So I would just like to put my thoughts forward in favour of our organic waste collection, curbside collection, as they do in Hamilton and Te Puke and different parts of the country. And a huge part of this is because I have done some research into how the waste in the Coromandel area, you guys released a whole bunch of information, but we also ran a story in the Seagull, and over 50% of the waste is food waste. And when it's put in underground, it doesn't compost the same way that it would if it was in a natural composter or in a commercial composter or whatever the process is that you might decide to do. And I think it's a really important option to have because obviously, for one, it will minimise the huge amount of waste that is being putting out each week. If you have everyone putting their food waste into composting, that will drop the blue bag size by half. Probably actually not quite half if you take into account everyone actually doing it. But I think it's really important, and I think it's really important to happen now because I know the rubbish contracts, they run for 10 years. And so if it doesn't happen now, we're going to have another 10 years, it'll be 2032. And I just think we're going to be like way, way, way behind everyone else in a way that would be quite embarrassing for our area, especially because we are the Coromandel and we should be one of the areas that's leading the forefront in environmental changes or having environmental policy in what we do because we rely so heavily on our environment for people to come into.
Yes.
So I'm really passionate about it. I also would love to see if the commercial composting systems come back. I used to run a business in Hahei where we used plant-based plastics, which I then had to organise going to commercial composting waste in Auckland because we didn't have that facility in our area. And I think a lot of the hospitality is trying to do their best to have less impact on the environment, but our options still are plastic based or still are commercially compostable based, but that's not really any better when they're just going to landfill anyway.
Yeah.
So I think there's like a real big gap that we have the potential to fill and talking about landfill, to actually create a difference and to be one of those places that the country looks to for what we are doing in terms of keeping our environment the most amazing and beautiful it can be.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Is there any question?
Sorry.
So you mentioned there about hospitality. So in your experience, are a lot of the takeaway type containers that they'll starting to use now instead of are they plant-based but can only be composted in a commercial thing because of the heat and that sort of thing?
Because of the heat, yes. A lot of people are moving to it's called plant-based plastic. So it still is a process of creating plastic that doesn't have as much of an impact on the environment as normal plastic, but it's still not great. But there are also a whole lot of options that are just coming into the industry now that are purely compostable, which wasn't the case 4 years ago when I ran my business. It was just the plant-based plastics, but it's based on the heat and having them all sit there for the amount of time that it's supposed to, and those things. Also, I spend a lot of time in Melbourne, and we don't have obviously the same facilities, but when you have your rubbish and recycling, you also had a bin for the commercially compostable stuff. So it was part of like any of the food courts, everything, if it was a plant-based plastic, it had its own bin so that it wasn't just going to landfill and you're not going through rubbish to try pick out, because that's gross.
Right, but what you're saying is increasingly the alternative to plastic ones are not just going to be commercially compostable; they're being developed to be ordinarily compostable.
They are being developed. At this stage, I haven't seen any coffee cups. They're all lined with like a plant plastic, but I've seen coffee cup lids, the forks and knives and spoons, and there are some like burger boxes and things like that that are coming out fully compostable. They are a little bit more expensive at the moment because they are kind of the first of their kind, but as always happens when more comes into the market, brings the price down, and when that's becomes your only option.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, actually, so reading between the lines with that, do you feel like we've got an opportunity to tackle, the two birds with the one stone? Apologies to the birds for that. By, doing the waste, curbside waste collection, that would feed into something that could also do commercial scale composting. That's what I'm hearing you say?
I think so. And I know that there are a lot of businesses in town that if that was an option to have like that service by the council, that they would, even if it was a service that was an additional cost, depending on what that cost is, because there are a lot of services like that even in Auckland where they come and collect your waste. I feel like if we had that the capacity to do that and we had somewhere for it to go, then there's a lot of people in this community that really do want to do something but don't know or don't have the means to actually do it.
I've just got one question, and it's not actually about our waste, it's about government's role. Like suddenly plastic bags, for shopping were illegal, and alternatives were found really quickly. Do you think things like banning non-recyclable coffee cups is a valid thing the government should be thinking about, or what is the role of government in this?
For coffee cups, it would be amazing if we could encourage bringing your own cup. Like, that is really not hard. But if government was to play a role in banning anything, my first thought would be the 5 plastic, because when you go into a supermarket, most things you buy in plastic. If you're buying hummus, if you're buying dips, if you're buying anything like that, they come in a 5 plastic, which we don't recycle in New Zealand, because there's nowhere for the plastic to be used. So there's no point in recycling something that doesn't have more life. If there was to be a ban on like being able to sell products in that kind of thing, then companies have to be inventive in what they're actually using, whether they change to a plastic that does have a recyclable life, or whether they come up with new ideas of what we can package things in. Plastic is convenient and has been so helpful, and there should be no shame in people going to the supermarket and buying plastic. It's just that there's so much of it and there's nowhere for it to go as it stands, or for a lot of it to go as it stands.
Right, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other questions? Thank you very much, Caitlin. Safe journeys wherever you are heading. Right.
Thank you. You guys have a lovely day. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. No trouble. So that is the end of the submission process. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone who was online. Thank you, Sandra. And I'll declare this particular session closed. Thank you. Safe journeys, everybody. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you, Sally.